If your wife left the house at 10 p.m., would you be worried? I wouldn't, because I just need to turn on the local news to see her. My wife, Laura Bennett, co-hosts the nightly news on a top TV station in Raleigh. She's both smart and beautiful, and many believe her next job could be in a major market like Dallas or Miami. There's even talk of a New York offer, the ultimate goal for news anchors. I'm Ryan Carter, and Laura kept her maiden name for broadcasting, as many female announcers do to separate their personal and professional lives. You can see how proud and lucky I am to be her husband. We met at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. She majored in broadcasting, and I studied marketing. We met at a freshman year fraternity party, and I was instantly smitten. She was tall, brunette, and stunning. I was outgoing but not an athlete or model material. Despite this, we hit it off and became a couple. We had our ups and downs, even breaking up for 2 weeks. I missed her so much I ran to her dorm, only to find her running toward me. It was a movie-like moment, and we promised never to part again. We were madly in love. By senior year, we were engaged and living together off campus, but we waited until after graduation to marry. She wanted a big wedding, and her family could afford it. We married in the Duke Chapel a week after graduation. Laura got a weekend weather anchor job in Greensboro, not prestigious, but a start. I got a low-level job at a local ad agency, gaining experience. Laura's career quickly took off. Within a year, she was offered a reporter position at the largest station in Charleston. We moved to the coast, where I found a job at a big ad firm. Laura thrived, becoming a weekend newscaster and eventually the nightly news co-host. Her pregnancy announcement boosted her popularity even more, and our daughter Emma's birth became a local event. The station produced a documentary series on Laura's experience as a new mother returning to work, winning a regional Emmy. Her success led to a co-host offer from Raleigh's top station, WRAL. We left our beloved Charleston for Raleigh, knowing it could lead to even bigger opportunities. Raleigh, with its 1.5 million population and significant media market, was a major step up for Laura's career. I was cautious about moving after being so comfortable in Charleston, but it turned out I had no reason to worry. Thanks to recommendations from my friends and help from the Raleigh station, I found a great job at the city's second-largest advertising agency. The station's management was fantastic, connecting us with a knowledgeable real estate agent who found us a wonderful house in Cary and a great daycare for baby Emma. The move was smoother than I expected, and we settled into our new life quickly. Our daily routine is quite different because being married to a television journalist is unique. I wake up, make breakfast, and go to work, leaving Laura and Emma to sleep. Laura gets up with Emma and spends the morning with her. After lunch, she takes Emma to Mrs. Fowler, a sweet woman who looks after Emma and a few other children, introducing them to concepts they'll encounter in kindergarten. I pick Emma up after work, cook dinner, and bathe her before reading to her and putting her to bed. Then I relax until Laura comes home, often waking me up on the couch. Laura's schedule is demanding. She arrives at the station at 3 p.m. to prepare for the evening news, goes on air at 6 p.m. and again at 10 p.m. Lately, the news director, Mark Reynolds, has been holding post-mortem meetings after the late newscast, making her stay even later. The competition for ratings is fierce, and stations constantly seek to increase their audience share. As an advertising professional, I understand the focus on ratings, but as a husband, I miss time alone with Laura. We both work long hours and often feel more like neighbors than spouses. Although we try to spend weekends together, it's challenging, especially with Laura's increasing public appearances. Our schedules rarely align, making it difficult to discuss our situation, and Laura seems reluctant to talk about it because there are no easy answers. When we married, we discussed these challenges, and I agreed to everything. Moreover, many of our friends face similar issues with demanding jobs. I try to be supportive because I knew what I was getting into, and Laura's income significantly eases our life, even though money isn't everything. Eventually, I couldn't keep my frustration to myself. One day at lunch, I confided in Jake Harrington, the media director at our agency. Jake, married with a daughter slightly older than Emma, became my best friend at work. When he talked about how happy he was with his family, I blurted out, "Damn, I wish I had what you have." "Looks like trouble in paradise, buddy," Jake said. "What's going on?" I poured my heart out, surprising myself with how bad I felt. "I'm married to one of the best women on TV," I grumbled, "but I see her as often as her fans do." Lou shook his head sympathetically. "That sucks, Ryan. Can't you take a vacation or a long weekend? Your folks would love to keep Emma." "I thought about it," I said, "but Laura says Mark Reynolds is pushing them to keep ratings up. He's afraid their absence will cause a drop they can't recover from." "Look," Lou replied, "I know Mark Reynolds. He's ambitious but also decent. Maybe you should talk to him and see if he can help you and Laura get some time together." "I don't know, Lou," I sighed. "Laura would liquidate me if she found out I talked to her boss." "She doesn't need to know," Lou said. "Mark's coming to the agency tomorrow for a presentation. You can catch him afterward." "I don't want to mix personal issues with work," I said. "Don't be silly. It's just a preliminary meeting. This is a great chance to talk to him." That evening, Laura arrived even later than usual. She didn't wake me from the couch where I had dozed off. I woke up in the middle of the night, dragged myself to bed next to her, and thought, now I won't even get to kiss her goodnight. Determined to change our pattern, I kept an eye on the conference room the next day as their meeting ended. I waved at Mark. He was in a good mood. "Hey, Ryan. How's my favorite news anchor's husband?" he shouted. "Hey, Mark. Do you have a couple of minutes?" I asked. "Sure, what's on your mind?" he asked cheerfully. "I need you to give Laura a break." "You're working her too hard," I said, frowning. He looked concerned. "Did she complain?" "No, she likes it," I replied. "I'm the one who suffers. I don't see her anymore." He relaxed and joked, "You knew she had a demanding job when you married her." "True," I agreed, "but all these appearances and post-show meetings cut into our time together." Okay, he said. "We've probably overdone it. I'll see if we can lighten her schedule. And don't worry about the post-mortems. We haven't had one since the last ratings came out. Have you seen how much we're outranking the competition? Management is thrilled. I've got to get to my next meeting. Keep pleasing your bride." With that, he patted my back and left. Back at my desk, I checked the ratings and saw the last set was published a month ago. If Mark hasn't held a post-mortem in a month, what was Laura doing when she came home so late? The thought shook me. I wondered if she was having an affair but quickly dismissed it. Laura loved me and wouldn't jeopardize our marriage. There were plenty of reasons she could be late, like catching up on fan mail or unwinding, but those reasons didn't make me feel any better. At that moment, Lou poked his head in. "Hey, I saw you talking to Mark. Did he give you any relief?" "I'm not sure, Lou. I guess I won't know until I talk to Laura." He looked puzzled, but when I didn't say more, he turned to leave. "Okay, buddy. Let me know if there's anything I can do." The rest of the day, I was like a zombie. I went through the motions, but my mind was elsewhere. I kept thinking about what Mark had said and what Laura had told me about her late hours. I considered confronting her but worried I'd look foolish if the explanation was innocent. Accusing her of an affair wouldn't help our relationship. Yet avoiding the issue felt weak. By the time I left work to pick up Emma, I hadn't solved anything. Thankfully, my 4-year-old's demands distracted me for the evening. She was unusually clingy, sensing my mood, and didn't want me to stop reading to her. When she finally fell asleep, I found tears welling up, thinking how sad it would be if her parents divorced. Emotionally drained, I watched TV but couldn't focus until the news came on. Watching Laura, I remembered how much I loved her and convinced myself she wouldn't cheat. It was past midnight when Laura arrived. "Oh, I didn't realize you were still up," she said, surprised. I hugged her. "I just wanted to see you. You're awfully late tonight." She kissed me quickly and took off her shoes. "Yeah, sorry. Mark held us up again with one of his autopsies," she said, heading to bed. As she walked upstairs, I realized she lied. Mark said he hadn't held a session in a month. I didn't want to believe she was cheating but also didn't want to ignore the truth. The next day, I asked Lou to have lunch with me. He sensed my seriousness and agreed. We drove to a restaurant far from the office in silence. When we ordered, I hesitated. Then Lou said, "It's Laura, isn't it?" His words opened the floodgates, and I poured out my fears and insecurities. Lou listened silently. "Damn. I thought you and Laura had the happiest marriage," Lou said. "Me too," I replied sadly. "So, what are you going to do?" he asked. His question clarified my thoughts. "Lou, I need to go to the station and see for myself. If I'm wrong and everything's innocent, I'll sneak out undetected. Laura will never know." "What if you're right?" Lou asked quietly. "I don't know. But at least I'll know the truth. It's better than this agony." "What about Emma?" he asked. "I've already thought of that," I told Lou. "When we get back, I'll call Mrs. Fowler and ask if she can keep Emma late tonight. She's offered before, so it should be fine." We finished lunch and returned to the office, though I was still distraught. I felt some relief having a plan. Even those facing execution feel some relief when the day finally arrives. Mrs. Fowler agreed to watch Emma but asked me to return by 11 p.m. "I have work in the morning," she said. It wasn't much time, but it was the best I could get, so I promised. After work, I informed Emma of the change. She cried at first but brightened, and Mrs. Fowler mentioned a pizza party. I paid for the extra time in pizza, then left before Emma could get upset again. I went home, made dinner, but couldn't eat. Cleaning up, I tried to distract myself, but doubts grew. The news wouldn't end until 10:30 p.m. What if Laura came straight home? What would I say? These fears paralyzed me until I remembered my resolve at lunch. I had to do something. By 10 p.m., I decided to go to the station. There wouldn't be many people there, an engineer, 2 cameramen, and a sound technician. Hopefully, I could go unnoticed. When I arrived, I realized my mistake. Joe, the night watchman, was there. He knew me, so getting in wasn't an issue, but I had to sign in. So much for stealth. "Good evening, Mr. Carter," Joe said. "Here to see the news." I replied, signing the log. Joe looked at me sympathetically. "There won't be a problem, will there?" "No, of course not," I replied quickly, heading to the studio. What did he mean? Did he know something? I peeked through the blackout curtains. The news had just ended, and Laura was heading toward the green room instead of her dressing room. The green room was dark, usually reserved for guests who never appear on the 10 p.m. news. As Laura opened the door, a lamp inside revealed a male figure. The door closed, and I was left outside, heart pounding. I could burst in, but if it was innocent, Laura would never forgive me. If I stayed outside, I'd never know. I remembered a small observation window Laura had shown me. I headed there, checking the time. It was already 10:45 p.m. I needed to leave soon to pick up Emma. I peered through the window and saw Laura in a carnal embrace with a man. I recorded a video with my phone, the light making her black lingerie stand out against her skin. I wanted to end it, but seeing the time, I had to pick up Emma. I ran to the lobby, nodded to Joe, and headed out the door. "I'm sorry, Mr. Carter," Joe said. Damn, I thought. Does everyone but me know what's going on? I jumped into the car and sped to Mrs. Fowler's house. She let me in, and I found Emma asleep. Wrapping her in a blanket, I picked her up and thanked Mrs. Fowler for keeping her. She looked at me oddly and asked, "Are you all right, Mr. Carter?" Only then did I realize I had tears streaming down my cheeks. "Oh, it's nothing. Just got something in my eye," I said. I thanked her again, carried Emma to the car, and drove home. Emma stayed asleep as I carried her upstairs and put her to bed. She looked so sweet and innocent, and I longed for the innocence I had lost tonight. I got a beer from the fridge and sat in the dark, waiting. Everything was quiet, and a memory of my grandmother's passing flashed through my mind, the silence deepened by my sadness. When Laura got home around 1 a.m., she turned on the kitchen light and saw me sitting there. "Ryan, what are you doing?" she asked, surprised. "I've been waiting for you," I replied evenly. "The security guard said you came by the studio. Is everything okay with Emma?" "Where is she?" Laura inquired. "Mrs. Fowler kept her for me." "She's asleep upstairs," I answered. "Well, if you came to the studio, why didn't you stop by my office?" she asked, her voice tinged with confusion. I steadied myself. This was it. "I saw you tonight. I saw you go into the green room with Ted Marshall," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "Oh, we just had a meeting after the news," she replied nonchalantly. "Laura," I looked through the observation window. "I saw what your meeting was about. I even saw your new lingerie," I stated, watching as she looked embarrassed. "Oh, Ryan, I'm so sorry," she said softly. "Are you sorry you did it or just sorry you got caught?" I demanded, my frustration growing. "I'm sorry you found out this way," she said quietly, avoiding my gaze. "You're leaving me for him, aren't you?" I asked, feeling a lump form in my throat. She dropped to her knees and took my hands. "No, honey, I'm not leaving you. This is just a fling. Maybe it'll be over soon, and things will go back to normal," she said, her words shocking me. "You're not going to stop. You're going to keep cheating on me?" I asked in disbelief. "It doesn't mean anything. Just let me have my fun, and I'll come back to you," she said, her tone dismissive. "I can't believe this. You expect me to agree to be a betrayed man?" I shouted, unable to contain my anger. She stood up and looked at me coldly. "Ryan, you really don't have a say," she said bluntly. "I'm your husband. If you don't stop, I'll file for divorce," I threatened, hoping to make her realize the gravity of the situation. She looked at me with a cold, calculating expression. "I don't think that's in your best interest, Ryan. You'll lose custody of Emma and most of our assets. The court won't care about the affair. They'll prioritize Emma's welfare, and I'll get custody. You'll only see her on weekends and some holidays," she stated matter-of-factly. "Wait, you're the one committing infidelity," I exclaimed. I protested, feeling the situation slip further out of my control. "This is a no-fault state, Ryan. The court won't care. Ask a lawyer if you don't believe me," Laura said with a finality that chilled me. "I don't want this to happen, Ryan. I want our family to stay together. This fling shouldn't concern us." "Just think about it," she said, kissing my head before heading to bed. I sat there, overwhelmed by anger, loss, sadness, and confusion. That Laura would cheat on me was unthinkable, but that she would suggest continuing the affair was beyond comprehension. Finally, I dragged myself to bed and fell asleep almost immediately, exhausted by the night's events. Even though I was drained, I woke up at 6 o'clock the next morning. Mechanically, I showered, shaved, and dressed. Wild thoughts ran through my mind: run away, shake Laura awake, kidnap Emma, or never get out of bed again. But looking at Emma, asleep in her bed, I knew I had to stay strong for her. Doing something rash would only cause me to lose her. I had to put her first. I completed my morning chores and headed to the office, working on autopilot. "Ryan, are you okay?" Lou asked. When I didn't answer, he came in and closed the door. "What's wrong?" he asked. I told him everything about last night. Lou listened, shocked by Laura's attitude. "Damn it," he said. "She expects you to put up with her cheating." He looked me in the eye. "Laura has changed. You can't rely on her anymore. You need to look out for yourself. The first thing you should do is consult an attorney. You need to find out your rights." "I don't know any lawyers in Raleigh," I replied. "That's where I can help," Lou said with a smile. "My college roommate is a lawyer here. I'll call him." A moment later, he returned with a piece of paper. "You have an appointment at 1 p.m. today. Here's his name and address." "Thanks, Lou. At least it gives me something to do," I said gratefully. "No problem. After you meet him, come back and tell me what he said," he instructed. The meeting with the lawyer was disheartening. He listened to my story and then explained the realities of a no-fault state. The court doesn't care who did what. It only decides on the division of property and child welfare, he said. "What does that mean for me?" I asked. "In short, Laura will get custody unless she's proven unfit. You'll get visitation rights, but Emma will live with her. You'll also pay child support, even though Laura makes more money," he said matter-of-factly. "And the house?" I asked, hoping for a glimmer of good news. "It's joint property, but the court prefers children to stay in the house. Laura will likely keep it until Emma turns 18. Then you can sell it and divide the equity," he explained. "But what if she moves to another market?" I objected. "Then you can sell the house. Until then, it stays put," he clarified. I shook my head, feeling defeated. Damn it. She knew exactly what she was talking about. "I'm screwed," I muttered. "I'm sorry," he said as we shook hands. "It's not always fair, but that's the law." Driving back, I felt like I was being punished for a sin I didn't commit. Lou saw my face and knew the outcome. "Damn it, Lou," I said. "It's just not fair. She put me in this situation, and there's nothing I can do. I have to put up with it to keep my daughter and my home." I paced around the office. "Now I understand why some men lose it." "Don't even joke about that, Ryan," Lou said quickly. "I know you're angry, but if anything happens to her, I don't want to testify that you made threats." "Okay, I get it," I agreed. "I wouldn't do anything like that. It just feels like she's an albatross around my neck." I glanced out the window and groaned. A new billboard showed Laura and Ted Marshall with the caption, "Raleigh's choice for the 6 o'clock news." "See?" I said to Lou, pointing at it. "I can't escape her, even here." Lou looked at the sign and then had an idea. "How desperate are you to get out of this mess?" he asked. "Not desperate enough for violence," I said firmly. "No, not that. But I have an idea," he said. We talked for an hour, with me repeatedly saying it was crazy and wouldn't work. Lou kept asking, "How much worse off would you be?" Eventually, I realized I was stuck and needed to try something. "Okay, Lou, I'm in," I said finally. I left the office feeling determined but filled with doubt. Could I risk losing my daughter for this plan? Maybe it was better to live as a betrayed man. As I picked up Emma and made dinner, I kept thinking. I turned off the TV, unable to watch Laura and Ted on the news. Surprisingly, Laura came home early. She put Emma to bed, and I heard them laughing and reading stories. It felt like old times. When Laura came downstairs, I thanked her. "She misses you, especially at bedtime." "I know," she said softly. "And I miss her too." I wondered if she was reconsidering her choices, but my hopes were dashed quickly. "I'm taking a vacation next week," she said. "Mark Reynolds suggested it because our ratings are so high." "I'll check with my boss tomorrow to join you," I said, trying to sound enthusiastic. "No, Ryan. Ted and I are going away alone. We're tired of sneaking around and want to enjoy each other without worries." I was stunned. Laura continued, "Mrs. Fowler will keep Emma all week. You just need to drop her off and pick her up. Here's where I'll be if you need to contact me." She handed me a piece of paper. "We'll be back on Sunday, and things will go back to normal." She kissed me on the head like I was a child and added, "Thanks for taking care of everything, honey," before heading to bed. Oh my God, I thought. This is the most humiliating experience of my life. I was shaking with anger and knew I had to regain my dignity. Lou's crazy plan seemed like the best option. I left work early on Friday to see Laura before she left with Ted Marshall. I arranged for Mrs. Fowler to keep Emma overnight, ensuring she wouldn't witness any arguments. I checked Laura's closet and saw her suitcases, so I knew she'd come home to pack. When her car pulled in, I waited in the living room. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "Is Emma okay?" "She's fine," I said. "She's at Mrs. Fowler's." "Then why are you here?" "I wanted to convince you not to go away with Ted this week," I told her. She put her hands on her hips. "I've told you, I'm having my affair with Ted. When we get back, it will be over, and everything will go back to normal. You just have to be patient." "But what about our wedding vows?" I pleaded. "What about leaving everyone else behind? Those vows were from another time." "No one believes that nonsense anymore," Laura said, irritated. "But this is infidelity. I don't want you to dishonor our marriage," I insisted. "Ryan, if I want to be with Ted, I will. This has nothing to do with you and me," she replied dismissively. "But what about your fans? They won't approve," I argued. "I don't care what they think. In a year, I'll leave this town for a real city. What people here think means nothing to me. Now stop pestering me, I have to pack or I'll be late." "If you can't stand seeing me with Ted, leave now," she said coldly. I stood up, slumping my shoulders. "I'm sorry, Laura. I'm sorry for everything." I left and drove to the local tavern. I needed to relax. As I sipped my second beer, Lou walked in. "Hey, buddy," he greeted. "How'd it go?" "I don't know, Lou. You'll have to see for yourself," I replied, feeling defeated. "Not until I try what you did," he said with a determined look. We finished our beers and then drove back to my house. Laura was gone. Lou sat at my computer and, with a few keystrokes, brought up the footage. We watched as Laura rejected my pleas and detailed her plans with Ted. "What a piece of work," Lou muttered. Then he saw her dismiss her fans and talk about leaving town. Lou's face lit up. "We got her. This is better than we hoped." He saved the recordings to a flash drive and removed the hidden cameras. "Backup copy," he said, holding up the drive. We drove back to the tavern for Lou's car. He insisted I follow him home for dinner. Edie made a big dinner. "If you don't show up, she'll be pissed," he urged. I reluctantly followed him. When we arrived, Edie hugged me and kissed my cheek. Whether it was friendship or pity, I appreciated it. I don't remember much of the dinner, just picking at my food while Lou and Edie exchanged concerned glances. Afterward, they led me to the den, and Lou opened a bottle of wine. We drank until Edie couldn't hold back any longer. "I'm so angry and disappointed in Laura, I don't know what to say. She always seemed so sweet and loving. When did she turn into a selfish, promiscuous woman?" Edie exclaimed. "Success has changed her. Now she thinks she can do anything," Lou said. Edie turned sharply to Lou. "Look, do whatever you can to help Ryan. I don't like taking sides in divorces, but this is different. Laura is out of line, and we need to help Ryan keep his daughter." Then she gave Lou a piercing stare. "And if you get hit on by any of those models or TV personalities, you better say no, or I'll come after you with a butcher knife." Lou and I laughed, but I wasn't sure if she was exaggerating. We talked and drank into the night until I collapsed on their couch. I vaguely remember Edie covering me with a blanket and patting my arm. The next thing I knew, morning light was streaming through the window, and I had a horrible taste in my mouth. Lou lent me a toothbrush and razor, and I tried to make myself presentable. Edie had made a big breakfast, and I joined them at the table. My appetite was a little better, probably due to my survival instincts kicking in. After breakfast, Lou took my hand. "Leave everything to me. I've got a lot to do this weekend. Just pick up Emma and get out of here." "I'll keep you posted," he said reassuringly. "Lou, I don't know what I'd do without you," I said sincerely. I hugged him awkwardly and headed home. I had one more task I wasn't looking forward to. I found Ted and Missy Marshall's number in our address book. When I called, Missy answered. "Hi, Missy, this is Ryan Carter, Laura's husband. Can I come over now to talk?" I asked. "Hi, Ryan." "Yes, come on over," she replied, sounding hesitant, probably wondering why I wanted to see her. As I drove to her house, I thought about what to say. Telling a woman her husband is cheating is never easy, and it was more awkward since I didn't know Missy well. But she needed to know. Missy went to the University of North Carolina with Laura and me. She was in Laura's sorority but was 2 years younger, so we didn't socialize much. I was surprised Missy had married Ted. She didn't seem like his type. When I arrived, she greeted me warmly and offered me a drink. "Just water with ice, please," I said, afraid my mouth would go dry. When she brought it, I took a sip and began. "Missy, do you know where Ted is?" I asked gently. "Of course," she said. "He's at a TV convention all week." "Why?" Concern crept into her voice. "Missy, I'm sorry to tell you this, but Ted isn't at a convention. He's with my wife, having an affair at the coast," I revealed as gently as possible. Missy looked as if I'd slapped her. "That can't be," she protested. "I saw him off last night. He loves me. Laura was like a sister to me, she wouldn't hurt me," she said, her voice trembling. Finally, she broke down. "Oh, Ryan, are you sure?" she asked, tears welling in her eyes. Grimly, I showed her the video from the green room. As she watched, her eyes reddened, and she began to cry. I sat next to her, stroking her back. "I know, Missy. I know," I said softly, trying to offer some comfort. Suddenly, she looked up, angry. "That cow seduced him." If you had her under control, she stopped when she saw my shocked face. "Oh, Ryan, I'm sorry. You lost your wife too, didn't you?" Her words brought back my pain and loss, and I started crying again. We hugged, seeking comfort in each other. Finally, we pulled away. She wiped her face and asked, "What are you going to do now?" I explained the predicament Laura had put me in, especially regarding Emma. Missy, who had no children, immediately understood Laura's influence over me and grasped my hand sympathetically. "Oh, Ryan, I never thought she could be so cruel," Missy said. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to file for divorce, but I need to make sure I don't lose Emma. It's better if you don't know the details, just in case." "You're not planning anything illegal, are you?" she asked, alarmed. "No, but if I succeed, both she and Ted will regret cheating," I said. I tried to smile to reassure her, but probably failed. "What about you? Can you rebuild your marriage after this?" I asked. After learning how long this had been going on and that they were spending a week together, Missy shook her head. "I can't stay with him. Maybe you should use my lawyer, unless you have someone else in mind, I suggested. She gave a weak smile. I don't know any lawyers. If you use mine, it could save you money since he already has my evidence. I handed her my lawyer's contact information. Call him on Monday and let him know we're on the same page. She nodded and took the paper. Missy, I need a huge favor, I said. What is it? She asked nervously. Please don't tell anyone about this until you hear from me. It could cost me the chance to keep Emma. She looked at me solemnly and nodded. I won't say a word, Ryan. I promise. I thanked her and stood to leave. What are you going to do now? She asked. I'm going to pick up my daughter and take her out of town until this settles down. She wished me luck, and I did the same. We're both going to need it, I thought. I drove to Mrs. Fowler's house. When I arrived, Emma met me at the door and jumped into my arms. Did you have a good time, honey? I asked. Oh yes, Daddy. I had a sleepover, we had pancakes for breakfast, and I played with dolls, she exclaimed. I thanked Mrs. Fowler and reminded her that Emma wouldn't be coming next week. She looked at me shrewdly and asked, Is everything all right, Ryan? I hope so, I replied. She kissed Emma's cheek and said, Take good care of her. She's like family to me. I'll be praying for you. Thank you, Mrs. Fowler. It means a lot, I said. I carried Emma to the car and buckled her in. When we got home, Emma asked, Where's Mommy? Mom had to go on a trip, but you and I are going on a trip too. Where are we going, Daddy? She asked excitedly. To Grandma and Grandpa's farm. She squealed and started dancing. Emma loved visiting my parents and seeing the farm animals. Can we see the ducks and the little pigs? She asked. Sure, honey, I told her. Let's get started. I grabbed our bags, and we headed to the car. I considered leaving Laura a note but decided against it. The drive to my parents' farm took a little over an hour. Emma slept most of the way. When we turned onto the gravel road, she woke up and pointed at the horses and cows. When we arrived, Mom and Dad greeted us. Emma rushed into Grandma's arms, eager to see the animals. Mom took her to the barn, giving me a concerned look. I took my bag, Dad took Emma's, and we went inside. Dad offered me a glass of fruit tea in the kitchen, its flavor reminding me of my childhood. Okay, Ryan, what's going on with you and Laura? Dad asked bluntly, worry in his eyes. Let's take a walk, Dad, and I'll tell you everything. I had been waiting for this conversation ever since I called and asked if we could stay for a week. They loved Laura and considered her the daughter they never had. I knew it would affect them deeply. As we walked along the fence, I told Dad the whole story. He was mostly silent, but I saw the pain in his eyes. He gasped at some parts, and by the end, there were tears in his eyes. I can't believe Laura could do this. She's always been so good to us and such a good mother to Emma. How could she become so callous and selfish? He looked at me carefully. Tom, could this be some kind of misunderstanding or a joke? Dad asked. I understood his denial, I still had trouble believing it myself. I pulled out my phone and showed him the video from the green room. Watch this, Dad. When he took the phone, I reached over and pressed play. He muttered to himself in a half-whisper, I can't make out, oh my God. I saw the moment the picture came into focus for him, Laura's nearly undressed body broke free from Ted Marshall's embrace and began sliding down his torso. I took the phone from him, and he stood there helplessly, his shoulders slumped and his face tense. Then he grabbed me and pulled me into a tight hug. Oh, son, I'm so sorry. It hurts me so much to see this. I can't imagine how you felt, he said, his voice heavy with emotion. We stood there for a few more minutes, then walked back to the house in silence, his hand on my shoulder. I turned to him and asked, Dad, can you tell Mom? I don't think I can. He nodded solemnly. I'll do it, he said quietly. Mom and Emma were in the kitchen having a snack when we returned. Mom looked worried when she saw Dad's face. Why don't you take Emma to the pond to see the ducklings? Dad suggested. Emma jumped up, tugging my arm. Let's go see the ducks, Daddy, she exclaimed eagerly. I nodded gratefully to Dad and led Emma to the pond. When we got back, Mom had been crying. She hugged me tightly. I love you, Ryan. Dad and I will be here for you no matter what happens, she said, her voice trembling. Thanks, Mom, I whispered, looking at Dad. Thank you, Dad. That means a lot, I added. We stood together for a long time, the silence unsettling Emma. I turned to her and said, Okay, Emma, let's go unpack and get ready for dinner. She took my hand and led me to our room. I told myself I would never lose my daughter, no matter what. The next day, we went to the old Baptist church that Mom and Dad had attended for years. I was glad to hear the familiar words and sing the old hymns. That evening, Lou called to update me on his weekend's work. I realized how lucky I was to have him as a friend and how much I owed him. When I tried to thank him, he brushed it off. You would have done it for me, he said dismissively. He understood what I wanted to say. Then his tone changed. Okay, Ryan, are you ready to put our plan into action? There's no turning back once we start, he warned. I paused to consider the risks. Even if we succeeded, things could still end badly. But Laura had humiliated me and put me in an unbearable position. I had to fight back. Lou, I said, let's do it. Lou must have sensed my resolve. If anything, Edie thinks you're doing the right thing, he said, cheering me up. Do you have access to a computer? I laughed. Yes, we're not living in the 1800s. Good. I'll call you tomorrow with more info, he said. Why not just email me the link? I asked, puzzled. No, I want to keep this private. Just wait for my call, he insisted. That night, I checked on Emma, making sure she was asleep in her new bed. Lou called mid-morning Monday. When you get some privacy, go to YouTube and type WXY into the search bar, he instructed. Watch it and tell me what you think. Mom and Dad took Emma out for a walk, so the timing was perfect. I went to YouTube and searched. One video titled WXY co-host Laura Bennett shares her personal philosophy on love and marriage caught my eye. The familiar theme music for the 6 o'clock news played, but as the camera zoomed in on Laura, her voice faded, and a voiceover began. Popular news co-host Laura Bennett of WXY was recently interviewed about her views on love and marriage, the voiceover announced. The screen switched to Laura saying, marriage is an institution that has been around as long as human society, but today it is under siege like never before. I recognized those lines from a series WXY had aired about the rising divorce rate. But instead of continuing, the voiceover returned. What are your views on the sanctity of marriage, Laura? The voiceover asked. The scene shifted to our den, where Laura spoke. Wedding vows were written for another time. No one believes that nonsense anymore, she said. The scene froze, and the voiceover continued. What about fidelity to your husband? The voiceover asked. Laura replied, if I want to leave and hook up with Ted Marshall, I'll do it. That's what I want. Ted Marshall's image appeared, leaving no doubt about who she meant. The voiceover resumed. What about the public's opinion? Do you think your viewers would agree? The voiceover questioned. Laura answered, I don't care what my fans think. They're just redneck dorks. In 6 months to a year, I'll leave this town for a real city. What people here think means nothing to me. The unseen voice asked, so you plan to have an affair with Ted Marshall? Laura's response was clear, I've already told you I'm going to have my affair with Ted, and there's nothing you can do. The video switched to footage I had shot in the green room, Laura, nearly undressed, with Ted. The screen froze on an intimate scene, and the voiceover concluded. Now, Raleigh viewers are left with one question: where are Laura and Ted this week? The WXY News theme played, showing an empty newsroom before fading out. I leaned back, feeling a mix of triumph and sadness. I called Lou, who answered on the first ring. "What do you think?" he asked, his voice brimming with excitement. "My God, Lou, you're a genius. This will ruin her career," I said, amazed. "Not bad, huh?" "I'm proud of it," he said cheerfully. I felt a twinge of guilt. Were we too rough on her? I asked. "Did she say all those things to you?" Lou countered. "Yes, but..." "No buts. She turned into a selfish monster, and we need to show that to the world," he said firmly. "You're a good guy, Ryan. If you don't do this, it won't be you who suffers, it'll be Emma. Do you want Laura as her role model?" "You're right, Lou. There's no choice," I admitted. "So what's next? Do we send out mass emails with the video link?" "No need. This will spread on its own. I'll hint to a few gossipers, and it'll go viral. Just be patient," he assured me. "Okay, Lou, keep me informed," I said, feeling a bit more at ease. For the next few days, Emma and I enjoyed our time at the farm. She learned about farming and cooking with my mom. It was a wonderful week, exposing her to things she wouldn't see in the city. Meanwhile, Lou called daily with updates. On Tuesday, he chuckled as he told me Edie heard about the video from a coworker. By Wednesday, it was discussed at the Kiwanis meeting, and on Thursday, a media columnist mentioned it in the paper, ending with, "And the question on everyone's mind, where are Laura and Ted?" Lou couldn't hide his glee when he called Thursday afternoon. "I talked to our media officer who handles WBX, Lou said. The whole station is in a panic. They're getting calls from other news outlets trying to interview Laura and Ted about the video, and the WXY staff doesn't know what to do. Don Reynolds is also out of town, and no one can reach him." On Friday, Lou directed me to a media blog article on Gawker.com. It reported on the uproar caused by the WXY anchors and linked to the YouTube video, predicting that heads might roll. That morning, I called my attorney to file for divorce and arranged for Laura to be served on Saturday at the country house in Gulf Shores where she and Ted were staying. I figured it was worth the cost. I also called Missy to let her know and asked if she wanted Ted served at the same time. "No," she replied. "I'll do it myself when he gets home." I wished her luck. Other local TV stations in Raleigh, jealous of WXY's success, smelled blood when they saw the video. Lou tipped off a producer at the second highest rated channel that I was filing for divorce, which they could report as a real news event. My attorney confirmed the filing and revealed the location where Laura would be served. The station decided to go full force, sending a video crew and lead reporter to Gulf Shores on Saturday. Lou called me Saturday morning with more news. Don Reynolds has been contacted, cut his vacation short, and is trying to return to Raleigh. The WXY staff is terrified, Lou said. He advised me to watch the evening news on a competitor station. Saturday, usually a slow news day, saw the Laura and Ted story as the top headline. The co-host opened with a picture of Laura and Ted, showing a billboard from my office window. Many Raleigh residents have been concerned about the whereabouts of Laura Bennett and Ted Marshall of WXY. We found them in Gulf Shores. The footage cut to the reporter, Hilda O'Reilly, walking down the beach toward Laura and Ted sunbathing. Neither noticed until Hilda started asking loudly, "Laura Bennett. Ted Marshall. What can you tell us about your relationship and the stories going around in Raleigh?" Laura, startled and unclothed, hastily covered herself with a towel. Ted scrambled to cover his Speedo with a larger towel. "What do you have to say about the video all over the internet?" Hilda asked. "What video?" Laura asked, confused. The one where you told Raleigh residents you came here to have an affair with Ted Marshall, Hilda replied coldly. Laura sputtered, and Ted tried to intervene, but a man in a suit suddenly appeared, asking, "Are you Laura Carter Bennett?" Reflexively, Laura answered, "Yes." "Then, Ms. Bennett," he said, handing her an envelope, "you have been served. Your husband also instructed me to inform you that the locks on your house have been changed, and you are no longer welcome there." The man walked away, leaving Laura stunned. Anger flashed in her eyes as she screamed, "That son of a—" Ted, realizing the cameras were still rolling, grabbed her and led her toward the resort. The camera followed, focusing on her oil-slicked backside as she stormed away. The local announcer reappeared on the screen. Laura Bennett and Ted Marshall, missing all week, were sharing a room at a posh Gulf Shores resort. Laura's husband has sued her for divorce and kicked her out of the house. "We tried to contact him but couldn't get a comment. They couldn't reach me because Emma and I were at my parents' farm." Lou later informed me that Laura hadn't believed the bluff about the locks being changed. When she went to the house with Ted, she found her key didn't work. A camera crew caught her frustration. Meanwhile, at Ted's house, Missy served him divorce papers at the door. Also caught on camera, Laura and Ted ended up spending the night in a cheap motel. Lou got more details from our media manager, who had heard from a contact at WXY. Don Reynolds had returned to Raleigh on Sunday morning and tried unsuccessfully to contact Laura and Ted, who had their phones off. Don was furious, especially after seeing the competing network's exclusive report. Ted finally called the office Sunday afternoon, and Don ordered them both to the studio. They sneaked in through the service elevator to avoid the competing station's van parked outside. Don berated them for their behavior in front of the entire staff and then fired them on the spot. Laura screamed, "You can't do that. We have contracts." Don replied coldly, "Your contracts have a morals clause requiring you to behave according to societal norms. What we do in private is nobody's business." Laura snapped back. Don, a practicing Catholic, stood up, his voice rising. "The priest spoke about the sanctity of marriage and the sin of infidelity at Mass this morning. He didn't mention you by name, but he referred to public figures setting a bad example." Laura recoiled, but Ted continued, "Nobody knows or cares about us." Don sarcastically replied, "Obviously, you didn't see the news last night. Just look out the window." He pulled back the curtain, revealing a vandalized billboard that now read, "Raleigh's choice for the 6 o'clock news is a strumpet." Laura gasped. Don continued, "Your behavior has dishonored the station and damaged our ratings and reputation. I have no choice but to take you off the air and terminate your contracts." "Have you ever seen the original Frankenstein?" Confused, they nodded. "Well," Don said, "you are the monster, and the people of Raleigh are the angry mob. If I were you, I'd leave town as soon as possible." I was very nervous driving back to Raleigh on Sunday evening. I left late to avoid any confrontation with Laura or the media. On the way, I heard the news about Laura and Ted's dismissal. When I arrived home, the media had already left. The next morning, the Raleigh News broke a new scandal involving a city politician accused of embezzlement, pushing Ted and Laura's story to the back pages. No one cared about my reaction anymore. I took Emma to Mrs. Fowler's house. She welcomed Emma warmly, and Emma ran off to play. Mrs. Fowler gave me a sympathetic look. "I was so sad to hear about everything, Ryan. I hope you and Emma are doing well," she said. I thanked her, though I didn't know how things would turn out. It was telling that she didn't mention Laura. At the office, everyone was friendly but seemed to avoid me, except for Lou. He hugged me tightly. "You're a genius," I told him. "You're a master of the viral campaign." "It worked out better than we hoped," he said. "The only downside is we'll never be able to tell anyone what we did." "That's good," I replied. "Laura will figure out I was behind it and come after me." I don't want you caught in the crossfire. To my surprise, my lawyer called at the end of the week with news that Laura had decided not to contest the divorce. But why? I asked. She said she'd fight me. Her attorney talked her out of it, he said. She wanted to countersue for invasion of privacy, but the legal questions were too complicated, and she's not popular now, no sympathetic jurors. What about Emma? I asked. Laura swore she'd try to take her. Laura is unemployed with no prospects. No judge would give her custody. She's leaving town and giving up custody in your favor. She only wants to get her belongings before she leaves and to talk to you. If she signs the papers, I can talk to her before she leaves, I agreed. We arranged for the meeting at the end of the week. I got almost everything I wanted. No, that wasn't true, what I really wanted was my old life back, but that was impossible. At least I had my daughter, and that was what mattered most. The next night, Lou, Edie, and I celebrated over dinner. Emma came too and slept in one of their beds while we talked. I brought champagne to toast my friends. Edie raised her glass. To us, she said. I thought your scheme was crazy and would blow up in your faces, but you, she saluted me, were fighting for your little girl. And you, she pointed at Lou, my loving husband, were confident you could handle it. Thank you both for fighting and winning despite the odds. Cheers. Lou and I agreed in unison, cheers. Before wrapping up everything, I felt the need to check on Missy Marshall. She was an innocent bystander caught in the mess, suffering perhaps more than anyone else. I felt guilty for involving her, even though it was necessary, and Ted was the real culprit. Unlike me, Missy hadn't seen this coming. I called her, and she invited me to lunch, indicating she didn't hold a grudge. We met at a quiet restaurant. After we ordered, I asked how she was doing. Not well, Ryan, she said. One day, I'm happily married to a TV host. The next, I'm divorcing a liar who humiliated me. I know, Missy. This feels like a bad soap opera, I sympathized. She asked about my situation with Laura, and I shared the divorce results. Good, she said vindicatively. She got what she deserved. What about Ted? I asked. That coward left town without facing me. He told his lawyer to give me whatever I wanted, she said. I don't know where he is, and I don't care, except I keep waking up, reaching for him, Missy said, tearing up. Are you okay financially? I asked. Yes and no. He left me the house, but it's too big, with a big mortgage. Ted has to pay alimony, but I don't count on it. Finding a new job for him won't be easy. I think I'll move in with my parents, find a job, and rebuild my life. This isn't how I imagine things, she said sadly. I felt terrible for her. Missy was a sweet person who didn't deserve this. I asked her to stay in touch and let me know where she was. I really liked Missy and hoped she could pull through. The last thing left was Laura's visit, which I wasn't looking forward to. My earlier anger had subsided with the success of our viral video. Feeling I had regained some dignity, I no longer wanted to fight with Laura or gloat. I decided to do something nice for her by having Emma there when she arrived. When Laura got out of the SUV she had rented to move her belongings, she frowned. But when I let Emma run to her, the frown disappeared, replaced by a smile and happy tears as Emma hugged her. Laura looked up at me and whispered, "Thank you." They played together for a long time. The visit was supposed to last an hour, but I disregarded that once I decided to have Emma there. After Emma showed and told her mother everything, Laura suggested she go to her room to play. "I'll be up soon, baby. Daddy and I need to talk first," Laura said. Once Emma left, Laura turned to me, annoyed. "Thank you for that. I didn't expect you to let me see her." I just nodded. Laura's mood shifted. "You used a private conversation to destroy me and make me a laughingstock. how could you do that? I sighed. Laura, I don't want to fight anymore. Neither of us will win. Easy for you to say, she snapped. You cost me my job, my family, my future, all to protect your ego. Laura, I said, keeping my voice calm, I wasn't going to fight, but think about it. None of this would have happened if you hadn't acted on your desires without regard for anyone else. You brought this on yourself. Laura started to reply, but Emma called out, asking when she'd come upstairs. Laura looked at me, then went upstairs to see Emma. After playing in Emma's room, Laura packed her things while talking to her. I heard their happy chatter from downstairs. Finally, Laura came back down with her suitcases, Emma following. Laura knelt in front of Emma. Mom has to leave. I'll be living in another state and won't see you every day, but I'll visit whenever I can. We can talk on the phone and video call as much as you want. Emma immediately cried out, No, Mommy. I don't want you to go. She clung to her mother as if she were the only life raft in an ocean. Laura lifted her, hugging her tightly and trying to reassure her. It's okay, doll. I'll see you soon, and we'll have a great time. She walked over to me, holding Emma. Now be a good girl for Daddy. I love you, Emma, don't forget that. Laura picked up her suitcases and walked briskly to the door, tears streaming down her face, but she didn't look back. She loaded her suitcases into the car, waved quickly, and drove away. I hugged my sobbing daughter, tears running down my cheeks too. I was losing my wife, and Emma was losing her mother. Finally, I put Emma down. Listen, I said, I have an idea. What, Daddy? She asked, tears in her eyes. Why don't we go to the park and see the ducks? And maybe get some ice cream. Would you like that? Oh yes, she answered. And we can feed the cones to the ducks, can't we, Daddy? Of course we can, I replied, relieved to distract her. I knew she'd miss her mom, but I hoped young children were more resilient. I hoped I could adapt too. The next week, I had to adapt even more. Late one night, my boss called me into his office. Ryan, you've done a great job, and we appreciate your contributions to the agency, he said. I was waiting for the "but" I knew was coming. But this situation with your wife is affecting our clients. They ask if you're Laura's husband, and it impacts them. Our relationship with WXY is also strained, and they're a key media outlet for us. Are you firing me? I asked bluntly. Absolutely not, he said. But we think it's best if you seek employment elsewhere. How much time do I have? I snapped. Take as much as you need. I'll give you a glowing letter of recommendation. It wasn't fair, but there was no point in burning bridges. I shook his hand, assured him I understood, and thanked him for the recommendation. Then I went to Lou's office. What's up, buddy? He asked. I just got fired, I told him. The supervisors think it's best for me to leave. This is nonsense, he bellowed. I'm going to tell them what I think. I guided him back to his chair. You're not doing anything. I knew it was risky when I started. You've done too much for me already. He wasn't happy but calmed down. We ended the conversation with me promising to come over for dinner on Saturday, bringing my 4-year-old friend. Then I went back to my office and updated my resume. I realized that Laura and Ted's affair had made me damaged goods in the area. Everyone liked me, but no one wanted to hire me. It was time to widen my search. Eventually, I returned to my old agency in Mobile, where the scandal hadn't followed me, and they welcomed my big city experience. I had to sell my house in Raleigh, and although the market was decent, I got little from the sale since the proceeds had to be shared with Laura. Laura didn't disappear from our lives. She started calling Emma weekly and quickly moved to Skype so they could see each other face to face. In-person meetings were out of the question since Laura now lived in Santa Ana, California. Our video campaign against her had a broader impact than expected, making her job search difficult even outside the Southeast. Eventually, she got a job teaching journalism at Santa Ana College. When I reconnected with my old agency, I needed to find a place to live. The agency connected me with a real estate agent, Marilyn Elliott, who turned out to be Missy Marshall. She showed me several properties, and we caught up on everything that had happened. Missy had moved to Mobile shortly after Ted left and started a career in residential real estate. I mentioned needing a preschool for Emma, and Missy got excited, offering to help with that and other children's activities. I enjoyed our conversation and invited her to dinner to discuss the houses. She was always pretty, like the girl next door, and I found her natural and easy to talk to, unlike the TV personalities I was used to. Missy recommended a modestly priced house, which surprised me. When I asked why, she said it was where she would like to live. This honesty endeared her to me. Missy and I got married and moved into the house she liked. I was worried about how Emma and Missy would get along, but my fears were unfounded. Missy had wanted a family ever since marrying Ted, but he had refused, believing a child would hinder his career. She and Emma bonded instantly. Emma even started calling her Missy Mom, which soon became just Mom. That summer, we flew to Los Angeles so Emma could visit Laura. Missy and I planned to sightsee in LA while Emma stayed with her mom for a week. I was hesitant to bring this up with Missy, considering her reasons to dislike Laura, but she thought it was a great idea. She seemed more confident in our marriage and mature about the situation than I had anticipated. We arrived at John Wayne Airport, where Laura was waiting for us. Despite seeing her often on Skype, I almost didn't recognize her in person with her short haircut and business casual attire. Emma suddenly became shy, clinging to Missy's waist and hiding her face. Missy gently nudged her toward Laura, whispering encouragement. Eventually, Emma walked hesitantly to Laura, then ran and hugged her. Laura cried with happiness, which initially confused and worried Emma. "I'm just so happy to see you," Laura reassured her, and they hugged tightly. Laura looked at Missy and me and whispered, "Thank you." The four of us went to the baggage claim area. When Emma paused to admire items in a store window, Laura turned to us. "I know we don't have much time, but I want to apologize. I've done a lot of thinking and therapy over the past couple of years. I realized what I had become in my pursuit of stardom and how much I hurt those around me, especially you two. You probably can't forgive me, but I hope you won't hate me." Missy and I looked at each other, then hugged Laura together, letting go of a lot of past hurt. After our vacation, I called Raleigh one evening. Edie answered, and we chatted before I asked to speak to Lou. When he got on the line, I made my pitch. "You took a chance on me once. Will you do it again?" I asked, feeling a surge of hope. "What are you talking about, Ryan?" he replied, sounding puzzled. "Quit your job, move here, and start an advertising agency called Carter and Faraday. What do you say?" I proposed, holding my breath. Lou replied, "Only if we call it Faraday and Carter." We laughed and started planning. Lou wasn't happy at his old job and was eager for something new, so my call came at the perfect time. We moved Lou and Edie to Mobile, with Missy helping them find a beautiful home nearby, even refusing a commission to make it easier for them. Shortly after opening our agency, we pitched to a potential client who loved our approach. "I want to stand out. Can you guys do something like a viral campaign?" he asked, looking intrigued. Lou and I smiled at each other. "Yeah," I said, confidence growing. "We can handle it."